Hey everybody, this is another live stream by me, the Great Johannes, the Great Johannes podcast. No, it's not. I'm just going to do a live chat today. I enjoy chatting with the people. I stream usually through TikTok, and then I repost everything also onto YouTube later tonight. Let's see. It usually takes about 2 minutes before people come in. All right, I see the first users coming in. How's everybody doing? I hope the music isn't too obnoxious or too loud. I guess we can just have a little chat or something. I just want to talk and I have some things to say. I want to discuss a little bit about some new findings about the 9/11 attacks, the Twin Tower attacks. I'll discuss that a bit later on when there's more viewers. How is everybody? You can always subscribe to my newsletter at www.jmk.info. It's a Substack system. Daar ook goed. Ja, hier ook goed hoor. Patrick. Some Dutch people also follow me here. I guess what I took away from the Dutch elections yesterday, Geert Wilders, PVV won. I made a video about it. I think he's controlled opposition. Doesn't really matter. What matters is that the people are waking up. They're voting more right-wing. And there was a clip I saw today where a journalist interviewed young people why they voted for the PVV, for the right-wing party in the Netherlands. And the answers they gave were, it's all about housing. They're afraid that they might not be able to get a house when they graduate or when they get a job, and so they vote right-wing. And isn't that odd that people who are really only voting for being able to have a house in the country they were born in the country that their forefathers were all born in, right? And then to think that people who want to live in their own country are now right-wingers. That's how bizarre it is now. That's what has become of us. If you want to live in the country you were born in Europe as a European person, right? They will call you right wing. It's just absolutely maddening. It's total nonsense. So it's a Friday night. I don't know if people are going to be at home to watch the live stream. Probably not. So one of my videos went viral about the issue in Ireland, in Dublin. 3 young children were stabbed by a knife-wielding Algerian immigrant. And I made a video about this topic without even mentioning Algerian or immigrant. And you know what was so extreme? That video got taken down today because of slurs. Apparently they accused me of using hate speech and slurs, but my most vague description of the perpetrators was a certain demographic, and that apparently is enough on TikTok to have your videos reported and taken down. It's just insane. Like, you can't discuss the reality that you live in. You see things with your own eyes and you cannot describe what you saw because it's hate speech. It's just incredible. So hello everybody, people are coming into the show. I'm just going to do an hour-long live chat or so. It just started. I want to discuss some things. Maybe you have some questions. And someone tagged me in a video. I saw it too, yeah. I reposted it. It was a good video. So the hellscape that Europe is turning into, we need to be able to do something about it. But how can we do something about it if we're not allowed to express our true emotions about these events and we're not allowed to communicate, to get organized? Because in the end, we always pretend as though there's just 2 parties in the world. Either you're pro-Palestinian or you're pro-Israel. What about Europe? Doesn't Europe exist? Europe has 740 million people, at least 700 million white people, right? If we get organized as one force, which I always thought was the whole point of the European Union, right? Then we would be such a force to reckon with. We can impose our own will. We will impose our will onto the world. There's just no reason why we need to pretend as though we Europeans have no power. Individually, perhaps, if you're a small nation like Croatia with 4 million people, or a small nation like Hungary with 10 million people, we have no power. But the whole point of European Union was that we can actually use our strength together. And if we would unite in this sense as people, not under this bureaucratic monstrosity called the European Union in Brussels, but if we would actually figure out a way to unite our peoples here, culturally, psychologically, right? That we can slam our fist on the table and say, God damn it, this will not happen, right? To here and no further. Hey, hi, I'm from Romania, yeah. I'm from the Netherlands, I'm Dutch. So I see some, I'm reading the comments along here. So I was talking about, if we Europeans would unite together, we will be a force to reckon with. We can impose our will on basically what is our doorstep. The Middle East is Europe's doorstep. Why don't we treat it that way, right? Why don't we resolve that issue the way we see fit? We can do it. We have the power to do it. Europe, in principle, has the ability to be far stronger than the United States, for example. We have the capacity, in principle, to be far stronger than China, but why aren't we doing this? Why aren't we doing this? It's just weird. And so in relation to this, I wanted to talk to you about an interview I found. Let me put it on screen for a moment. I'll post a replay of all these videos also on YouTube later on my @thegreatjohannes. That's my YouTube username, just like here. I'll put it on mute, but I'll play it. This guy is Professor Dr. Maximilian Ruprecht auf Deutsch in German. And he is a structural engineer who basically developed, let me skip this here. He developed the, let's go straight to the interview part. Okay, so he developed the way to calculate how to bring big buildings down using planned explosives in a controlled demolition. So his thesis, written somewhere around the year 2000 in September, became the foundation for the actual takedown of the Twin Towers in 2001. His dissertation a year earlier gave people the calculations effectively to successfully pull down a big building like that. Now he of course was not involved, but being such a high-level, high-ranking structural engineer professor, even at the time when he was 28 years old, he could see, he and his colleagues, they actually gathered at this event to watch what was going on in the USA. Twin Towers came down. And mind you, on that day, nobody had seen airplanes yet because the airplane footage wasn't aired until a day later, right? What people saw was buildings collapsing. And based on what you saw in terms of the collapse, this guy, Professor, not this one, but the other one they're interviewing, Professor Dr. Maximilian Ruprecht, he concluded, and all his colleagues concluded at this Engineers Institute in Berlin, they all concluded this was a controlled demolition. The Twin Towers were taken down with explosives in a controlled demolition, and he estimates that it must have taken at least 2 years of planning, calculating, and preparations to actually do it, to pull it off. Why? Because the buildings came down so clean in a straight manner, right? They came down vertically. They didn't tip over or topple. He actually even thought that to be able to pull that off twice for 2 buildings, of course, was such an incredible feat that he was actually quite, almost proud of the fact that they pulled it off, that they succeeded in doing it that way. So let me read along a little bit here. He describes having, say, after-work parties at his university, where he graduated for his PhD. And he says that, this time Americans weren't present. Normally they were always present there when there was a party for drinking and eating, right? And this was actually the reason why a higher-ranking German officer said, and they're watching the screens, right? They're watching 9/11 towers come down and say, look what happened there. The Americans are bringing down these towers and they didn't even bother to tell us. The audacity. Well, when there's a demolition on our side, and now quoting the military officer, then they always come over to drink and guzzle, and now we can't join them. Effectively, everybody present at this Bauinstitut, the Builders, Engineers Institute, right, concluded that the Americans had simply pulled down the building with planned explosives, controlled the demolition, right? And we basically knew instantly, for buildings to come down that way, it can only be a planned procedure. This was not caused by planes hitting it up top. This was caused by bombs throughout the whole building. And they felt, wow, respect, this is really a clean job. This is quite a feat. This isn't easy. You have to think about it like this. Well, and then he goes on. So the interviewer asks Rupert, I said Ruprecht, but it's Rupert, Maximilian Rupert, of the Ingolstadt Technische Hochschule. And he asked them, was there any doubt among you specialists, you builders and you engineers, whether perhaps planes could have taken these buildings down? No doubts. That didn't happen. We instantly knew this had to have been facilitated through a planned explosion, however which way this was accomplished, but we instantly knew they were brought down in a controlled manner, and we had only seen the two towers, the twin towers, because there was a third tower, W Trade Center 7, WTC 7, which was not hit by planes. All right. And why do I bring this up? Because I don't know if the video paused over here for you. I bring it up because what they're discussing actually here, the topic of their interview is actually the end of evidence-based science. They're saying that up to 2001, up to the attacks on 9/11, they were able to use science to verify whether something was or wasn't true. But since 9/11, science apparently can also be used to obfuscate the truth, to hide the truth, right? You can now use science to lie about what happened. So it's anti-science. And in anti-science, what you do is you perhaps reverse engineer the sort of evidence that you wish to have. Then you present that engineered evidence to the scientists, who will then conclude, oh, planes did it, right? But planes didn't do it. And the science that claims planes did it is anti-science. It's fake science. So I just wanted to get that off my chest, because I've been looking into this 9/11 stuff for such a long time. I think I initially wanted to believe it, so we could go to war with the Muslims, right? And then later I realized that it was all a hoax. It was all just scammed. The USA scammed the whole Western world and NATO and all our allies into going to war with Iraq, Afghanistan, Syria later. And it was all for what? It was all for US empire. It did not serve our European interests in any way whatsoever. Hey man, Grigoras Doaga. Regards from Bristol, UK. So, what languages do I speak? I speak Dutch and English and German. And I can probably read Swedish, Afrikaans, Spanish, French. It's not like I speak those languages well. I speak only 3 languages well, and then there's a whole bunch that I can read and understand. I think I can listen to Swedish television by now, right? What do I think about Gaddafi? I like Gaddafi. Gaddafi had guts. He had the audacity to stand up to lots of European leaders that we ourselves don't even like. But then they took him out because I think he wanted to create a golden dinar standard and even connect that with the euro. He wanted to start selling oil to Europe in exchange for golden dinars. Basically, he wanted to switch the the reserve currency status of the USD and drop it. Basically, start using the euro instead, or gold, the golden dinar, to sell oil to Europe. And obviously, the USA comes in, plow him, take him out. Horrible stuff. The petrodollar, yeah. Wasn't there Israeli terrorists involved in some projects in 9/11? Yes, of course, the whole Mossad was involved. It's the Zionists did it. American Zionists and their allies in Israel and elsewhere in the world. They worked together to pull off 9/11, It's really nasty. Yeah. And I think originally Saudi Arabia was also involved. Let's not forget that the so-called terrorists did all have Saudi passports. Now, I don't personally believe that they were aboard planes that crashed anywhere. I do believe that, there's a Saudi involvement here because they were going to attack Iran in the end, right? And Iran is a different kind of, different brand of Islam. There's the difference between Shia and Shiite Muslims. And Saudis, they want to get rid of one of those. Did Gaddafi control the Suez Canal and let Iranian ships pass through? Well, that might have been a bit of a problem, yeah. But I think the Suez Canal goes through Egypt, but maybe Libya has some say in it, right? Yeah, the whole issue with that region has a lot to do with global shipping lanes. If you want to transport anything from India to Europe or from China to Europe, nowadays it has to go through the Suez Canal. And I think about 30% of wares in terms of shipping containers goes through the Suez Canal. So without that shipping connection, Europe would be very poor. We wouldn't have toilet paper anymore. So whoever controls that region, the Red Sea, whatever it's called, right? And Israel, right? So that's why, but still, I think it would be wrong to consider Israel just a territorial conflict or just a geopolitical thing. Israel, at the heart of it, is an emotional conflict. I call it a sibling rivalry between the Palestinians and the Jews. Both of them are effectively Semitic speaking, Semitic language, but also ethnically. I've heard of a research that says that the Palestinians are the actual descendants of the ancient Hebrews, and the modern Jews are from Belarusia and Ukraine and so on. Right? The Ashkenazi Jews they're not from that place originally. But I do believe Sephardi Jews are from there. They're Semitic North Africans, and then I do think a ton of Ashkenazi, of course, have some connection to the Jews of ancient Rome and Greece and so on. I think my point is, what I'm trying to explain is there is a Semitic sibling rivalry going on there in Palestine and Gaza and so on. That's what the conflict is really about. It's about the emotional conflict. And everything else, the gold in the mountains, the oil in the sea, and the gas in the Mediterranean and so on, I think that's all secondary. It's also real, but it's secondary. The material reality, I think, is just secondary. Yeah, whatever the case, it's not our problem. Let him deal with it, yeah. Europe should just learn to impose its will on conflicts like this. And remove ourselves from being victims on the wrong side of all of this, Okay, I want to show you something else. One of my favorite websites is this. Google Arts. So let's go over here. In Google Arts, you can they have this this gallery with where you see the interiors of Bavarian royal palaces from the late 19th century in photochrome prints. Those are like color photographs made with gold ink. Very complicated process. Well, let's just have a look at some of these things, right? Here. Imagine living in places like this, that you have a castle or a palace and everything is gold plated, everything is gold painted. And your kids are running around here because it's off limits to everybody else. This is all private. This is for you, right? But I doubt they would use, I doubt the ancient German kings and so on, the royalty, if they would actually use these kinds of places, maybe once a year for a ball or for a party or something, right? I've heard that a lot of these rich people with super big houses, these houses are often for show, and many have a second house, a smaller house nearby where they actually live, and the big house is just like a museum, just for show for visitors and tourists. And then you have, of course, often in these kinds of palaces, you have a private bedroom and a private kitchen that are quite small and snug, where families can have like a normal social life. Really, they don't actually move in these big places the whole time, because that would feel very empty. Imagine you have a family, king, queen, 3 princes or so, right? A princess. Imagine living in such a big house. You would never find each other. You would always lose each other. So what do is you convene in certain corners, the private corners, right? The ones you don't show to visitors and tourists, right? Everything else is just for show, to keep up appearances. But why do they do that? Why do the rich love keeping up appearances to show, look at how wealthy we are, look at how well we are doing? That is a psychological mindset, right? It's a form of extreme narcissism where you worry so much about how you are perceived that you have to have a big house and a big ass garden like this. You know, it's not quite normal, of course. You know? What's my opinion on Geert Wilders? Yeah, I made a video about that. It's good that the Dutch people voted for him, because it shows you that the people are ready to vote more right-wing in their self-interest. And the people who vote for Geert Wilders, PVV in the Netherlands yesterday, they largely vote for him for housing. They fear that immigration will mean that the natives in their own country won't be able to have a house anymore. So we got to do something about that. What I find interesting about this royal style, it's all extremely intricate, right? Extremely detailed. Everything is gold-plated. It's not practical to use this. Imagine spilling a coffee on this desk. Imagine having to clean all these little details, you know? And then you wipe off the gold, right? And you have to restore the gold. So that's why this stuff is for show. You don't actually use it. And I think like... Oh no, I clicked on something. I think like the royal family in Britain, King Charles, I think they can be very sneaky. They could, for example, set fire to a wing of their palaces, a wing they don't even use, and then they can simply collect insurance money and state funding to have it refurbished. Say it costs them like $8 million or so, 8 million pounds to refurbish it. But they charge 12 million and then they keep the 4 million difference, right? I think that's how the rich really roll. They just scam the state out of tax money. Hello, how are you? Yeah, Geert is a Zionist. Yeah, I think he's controlled opposition in this sense. You know, he's definitely Zionistic. Yeah. My info on Geert Wilders, all that I really know is that his father was from Indonesia, his mother was probably Jewish, his wife is probably Jewish, his wife is Hungarian. And yeah, does he really, he hates Islam because Islam is a threat to Israel mostly, but that's his motive. It's not like he hates Islam because he wants to protect the Dutch people. I'm not so sure if this is a prime minister who will care a lot about the future or the fate of the Dutch natives. So that's my problem, really. I also read his book, yeah, Marked for Death. I heard about the school attack in Ireland, yeah. I made a video about it last night, but when I woke up this morning, it was already taken down and banned. I appealed it, I won the appeal after it had 50,000 views on it. It was going viral and then they take it down, right? And then later this afternoon, I lost the video again because it was taken down the second time. And so TikTok does this regularly. So my strategy nowadays is to, whenever I win the appeal, I still have to hide the video. I set it to private. But this time I thought, okay, I'm going to keep the video up, see if I get away with it. But no, people just pound on on my videos, even though there was nothing, absolutely nothing I said in the video that was wrong. I'm just speaking about what happened, all right, and the fact that we have the right to do something about it, all right? And I quoted a poem from Rudyard Kipling, which in itself also doesn't contain any hate speech or slurs or whatever. It's just, let me see if I can recite Rudyard Kipling's first stanza. I don't know if I can do it by heart. No, I can't do it by heart. But actually, I'm just going to read it anyway. Wait, I go here. I want to read that poem, man, because Rudyard Kipling's poem, that one's so good. It's called The Beginnings by Rudyard Kipling. And it really speaks to people, you know? Because it applies to us. This is exactly who we are, what's going on now. Oh, wait. Crap, a doodle-doo. I want to open the image here. Maybe I can put it on screen for you as well, huh? I'm going to go over here. And let's see if it fits on the screen here. Yeah, kind of. Okay, I can kind of get it on screen for you. Maybe I'll zoom in a little bit. So let me read this to you, okay? Because this is such a good poem. Okay, like this. The Beginnings by Rudyard Kipling. It was not part of their blood. It came to them very late, with long arrears to make good when the English began to hate. They were not easily moved. They were icy, willing to wait, till every count should be proved, ere the English began to hate. Their voices were even and low, their eyes were level and straight. There was neither sign nor show when the English began to hate. It wasn't preached to the crowd, it wasn't taught by the state. No man spoke it aloud when the English began to hate. It wasn't suddenly bred. It will not swiftly abate. Through the chill years ahead, when time shall count from the date that the English began to hate. And this poem, we should repeat it many times. This could be our national or European poem, actually, because you can replace the word English with European. When the European began to hate. We need this kind of poetry, man. This is what eventually it can truly unite us beyond some cause. Like, imagine people reading this out in the streets, out loud, in every park, in every corner of the street, in every town where we've become minorities. And we start speaking this loud. We print it out in leaflets and deal it out to people, right? Hand it out in the shopping centers, right? Leave it behind in bookstores, wherever, right? People need to understand this is where we are, the beginnings, our beginning, the beginnings of Europe. I do have a Twitter, someone asks. Yeah, it's at JohannesMKX. I don't have a lot of followers there, but of course, if I have more followers, I will post. I always post my my newsletter content there. And you can also go to my my newsletter at www.jmk.info. It's my Substack, where you can subscribe. Who's the Neanderthal? The Neanderthal was saying the same thing? Who's that? Is that Boris Johnson? Or I don't know, if somebody talks of the Neanderthal, my first image is that's Boris Johnson of the UK. I don't know if that's what you meant. Is there another poem called If? Also by Rudyard Kipling. Or? If by Rudyard Kipling. Oh, it's on screen for you as well, right? Oh, this is a pretty long one. Let's see what this is about. Well, I'm not going to read this one, but I think it's probably a very good one too, yeah. But Rudyard Kipling, let's share it. Let's make people aware of it. It's like knockoff Red Bull, it's fake Red Bull. The budget version. Why pay $2 if you can pay 50 cents, right? Yeah, man, I'm going to read the last paragraph one more time because it's so good. It wasn't suddenly bred, and it will not swiftly abate. Through the chill years ahead, when time shall count from the date that the Europeans began to hate. Never forget. The music I'm playing is some synthwave playlist I found on YouTube. I suppose because it's Friday evening, normal people go out, right? So they're not going to be on here. Thanks to the people who are sending me gifts. It's always a few cents worth, but it's still something. It funds me a Red Bull. Let's see if I can have some more things to talk about. You know, I'm using this live stream also to practice speaking, right? If you want to do a live show, if I ever want to be on a live show, I need to very rapidly be able to switch between topics, have something interesting to say, preferably not in a scripted manner, but simply naturally know something to say. So, imagine once upon a time, I'll be on some live mainstream TV, and they're interviewing me, calling me the right-wing controversial figure, right? And they want to cancel me, right? I need to have that verbal ability to defend myself verbally, and basically show them that I'm right and they're wrong, preferably. Or simply show them that whatever they're saying doesn't even make any sense at all. I'm gonna look up some things to talk about. So to me, this is all speech practice. I will keep doing this until I feel that I've really mastered English language, and also the pronunciation can be better. And I think, in general, what the hardest part about speaking well, you know, it's actually thinking, because thinking is hard, even for me and for most people. Thinking is hard. Thinking of new ideas, thinking of how to say something, that's the second step. So imagine you have an idea in your head. You need to then convert that into language, right? And you want the language to sound well, like not just poetic or something. It needs to sound smart. Like, okay, you've thought about this. You know what you're talking about, right? You know the details, the ins and outs. And then say it in a way that is also either convincing or informative enough for people to understand it. I recently found out that young people, of course, don't know all the words, right? And so you have to also be wary of using big words. You can throw in a big word once in a while if you're also able to explain what it means succinctly. But in general, avoid using complicated words. It's not a competition about how smart you sound. It's a competition about, do you convince people? And convincing is usually done through emotion, by the way, but the people still need to understand your words. If they don't understand your big words, they're going to phase out, tune out, they're not going to listen anymore. You know, oh, this guy thinks he's better than us. He speaks a language we don't understand. Right? And so you can be speaking English in one version that everybody understands, or in another version that no one understands, right? And it's the same language officially. Right. If you have to rely on jargon, then you don't understand it. I suppose you can use some jargon if you're able to explain it then as well, right? If you just use a big word but you can't explain it, then you don't know what it is, right? I was going to look up some things to talk about more because I want to do these shows regularly, fill an hour of talking. Even though these are not the highest quality broadcasts of me, I suppose there's always people who will replay them or listen to them, and someone will benefit somehow, some way, while I benefit in my own way. Right? Use common words, yeah. Also in writing, yeah. One of the Dutch politicians yesterday, they had their elections, right? There was an alternative right-wing party called Forum for Democracy, led by Thierry Baudet, and he lost. 2 years earlier, he won 8 seats in the parliament. Now he only has 4 or 3, probably 3. And I did a little math on him, like, why did he lose? There's several reasons. One, he's actually a weak man. Why do I say that? I don't mean that as an insult, but I mean it so that if you want to be a political leader and someone knocks you in the face, what's the first thing you do? You fight back. Donald Trump was once attacked by some weirdo who came at him with a knife, and Trump turns around, faces him with his hands up. I don't think he didn't throw punches, but at least Trump was not running away. He wasn't showing fear. Trump was like, what's going on? What's going on? And he was basically ready for it, right? That shows strength. Even if you don't have to blow somebody or strike somebody, you have to show strength, right? Yeah, I am a Dutch person, by the way. And so Thierry Baudet of the Forum for Democracy I was talking about, he got hit in the face with a beer bottle, and then his response was this. He tried to hold his own face, expecting the security to save him. He didn't do anything. And then what happens is, he was supposed to have another event later that night, where he was supposed to show up and talk to his audience, and he canceled. He was not badly damaged or anything. He canceled. He ran to the hospital first, and then he cancels his evening with his people. But if you are a politician, if you want to be a leader, and you're knocked in the face publicly, everybody saw it, the first thing you do is you get up, you fight, and you don't cancel your evening. You go straight to your event, right? You go to a doctor after you've done your event to show how strong you are. You can take a blow, you can take a beating. And then the next mistake that Thierry Baudet made was he canceled also, after the elections, there's supposed to be you and your followers, they have an evening, right? To celebrate the election outcome, right? And he canceled that event even before the elections. All of these steps show you that he is a fearful, easily frightened, weak man who doesn't really care about being a strong leader and pushing back and fighting back. He can never be the leader of a country, right? If you want to be a leader of anything, you're going to have to take the blows and show people you can take the blows. Nobody likes a boxer who gives up after 2 blows, right? Right? They'll never give you a medal. But that's just how it is, Right, great example here. Theodore Roosevelt got shot and he made a speech immediately thereafter. That's what you have to do if you want to be the leader. You don't want to get shot, but if you do get shot, and if you're not in life-threatening danger, you better continue your speech. Now JFK was different, of course. He could never speak again, but Tiki is a payment system, by the way. Someone asked what that is. It's a payment system where you can send money. It's just like a bank wire, but it's instant. And you can send one through WhatsApp or something. You can share the link to your friends. Yeah? Theodore Roosevelt was bleeding during his speech after getting shot. Well, that's why he was a great leader, see? You might not like it, but this is... what do people really vote for? They actually vote for their own self-interest. They want to have affordable housing. They want to grow in their career. They want more money. They want to be liked. People want to be liked. If you're a politician and your aim is to be liked by the people, you lose. But if you can get the people if you like the people, let them know that there's someone out there who's going to defend them, watch over them, right? Then they're more interested in you. Right? You got to really show the benefit. What is the reason they should vote for you? Right? What do I think of Joe Rogan? Well, what am I supposed to say? He has a third of his guests are Jewish. It doesn't seem to bother him, so think of that what you will. Even though the U.S. population is just 3%. Yeah, someone describes here, if a Dutch person invites you to coffee or even dinner, and then you visit their house, they give you a cup of coffee and dinner, and then when you leave, they will text you a link to pay the coffee that they gave you. Dutch people are not as wealthy as you think you are. They say we are Scrooges. It's partly true, because Dutch people, they save for holidays. They think about next summer we're going on holiday doing this and that. They need this much money. And the Dutch people, they may make this or that in a month, but they also spend everything. It's on rent and mortgages and so on, taxes. You really don't get to keep a lot of money in the Netherlands, so people often live off very little. Yeah, Joe Rogan, yeah, I don't know. I wouldn't want to be on his show because I don't really take him that seriously, you know. How do Dutch girls compare to American girls? I think with Dutch girls you can just have normal conversations, but American girls, they just go straight for the money and it's all for show, it's all really fake. That's how I feel about it. Because I've been to the USA often, you know. I don't know if I should tell you, I once met this girl from Canada in the Netherlands, and I just had a normal conversation with her, and she was like, whoa. Like she was like young, and she'd never had like a real normal conversation with a guy before, because she says she was from the Toronto area, and she says when I go outside, there's all these, you know, Pakistani people, Indian people. They all go like, hey, you wanna fuck? They always come up to her, just that's their level of communication. You wanna fuck? And they couldn't have a normal conversation with her, and it was the first time she ever had a normal conversation with a guy. Oh, that must be so horrible. Later she told me that she couldn't sleep at night in the Netherlands. Can you guess why? So a girl from Canada couldn't sleep at night in the Netherlands because there were no gunshot sounds. She said she was from this Toronto area where every night when she went to bed she could hear gunshots, and she couldn't sleep without them, without the terror. You know, Canada is America's hat. You know? Yeah, I also really respected Jordan Peterson for a long time, until all of a sudden he pops out as a Zionist. Yeah, weird, huh? Didn't see that coming. I liked Jordan Peterson, the psychologist, who was very insightful. I still respect him for that. But then he switches to, you know, shaking hands with Netanyahu, having pizza, or no, and whatever, the small hat guy. I forget their names all the time, but you know, that's just silly. I think Peterson really blew it. What is he? Who is this guy? You know, he's a Zionist? Okay, weird. Why do you do that? Why do you switch to that side all of a sudden? All of a sudden you're political. All of a sudden you're no longer the independent thinker who understood human psychology, who wanted to help young white men succeed in life. You know, clean your room, right? But I was on to him like years ago. You know, it's not just recently, but I think I followed him like quite early on, liked him for this psychology, and then all of a sudden you see him transform into this very opinionated, angry man. Jordan Peterson admitted on camera in 2017 that his goal is to neutralize young white right-wing men. Yeah, to prevent us from getting organized. Well, I'm not young anymore, but to prevent our men from getting organized and fighting back. Yeah, to diffuse us, really. We shouldn't allow that to happen, man. Come on. And I was talking about this in another video I made today. Is there's speech police that we understand by now, right? But then there's also the feelings police. Ordinary white people, when they are mugged and robbed by a large group of others, they're not allowed to express their feelings about that. They're supposed to hush it up, keep quiet, or you're racist. And this level of, repression, state repression, media repression, where you as still a member of a majority in your own country can't openly vent your feelings about something that happened to you or something that happened to people you care about, right? And describe the perpetrators in detail, like this is who they were, they did it, all right? The speech police is one thing, right? You can kind of adjust your wording and phrasing to get away with a lot. I get away with a lot on TikTok because I use different phrases, right? But to have the emotion police, the feelings police on top of that, where you are not even allowed to express your anger or something over something that is actually happening in Europe, For example, in Sweden, the majority of the rapes involve a Swedish woman getting raped by an immigrant man. Why won't you talk about this? Why won't the Swedes get angry about it? And I think the real reason is this is our flaw, and we should also, mention our own weaknesses. Namely, most people in Northwestern Europe that I have seen up close, they care mostly for the value of their house. And as long as the value of their house is rising, they'll take the rape on top of it because it's just 0.5%. Who cares? It's not a big deal as long as it doesn't affect the value of my house. When European white people speak of progressive politics, they mean that the value of their house should progressively increase. They don't actually care about progressive values. They just care about money. That's quite a bit of a shocker to me that our own people, our normies, are so deeply motivated just by money. They clarify their whole life in terms of money. Everything is money. They really worship the god Mammon nowadays. But it wasn't always that way. This is a modern development since the 1950s or so. All of a sudden we became this way. Yeah. Well, most ordinary people, someone asks, why are people so obsessed with their homes? Well, in Northwestern Europe, most people don't have wealth, but they do have a house that is worth 300, 400, 500,000 euros or more, right? So they have a mortgage on it, of course. It's mortgaged, so they pay the mortgage every month off of their paychecks. But as the value of their house is increasing, the profit they can take on a sale also increases. And so that's what they're dreaming of. Basically, to most ordinary Northwest European white people, their wealth is in that profit margin they can take if they sold their house now, right? And as long as that is growing, they got 80K, 90K, 100K extra, 200K extra, right? And that's what makes these people feel as though their lives are meaningful and valuable. They literally only live for that sense of value that they derive from the house that they own. It's quite sad, really, but that is the reality. I suppose we can extrapolate this a bit and come up with a sense of when will people like Dutch people, when will they finally really truly revolt? That is, of course, when the profit margin on their house that they mortgaged evaporates, when the houses lose their value. And it's actually happening in the Netherlands because in order to accommodate all these masses of immigrants coming into Europe, the Netherlands is building more housing. But what kind of housing do you think they're building? They're building way cheaper housing. All of a sudden, they can build a house for 80,000 euros, which is unheard of in the Netherlands. Normally, the cheapest houses would start at around 180K. That's a really shitty, shabby house, like a shack almost, right? And average houses go for about 300K nowadays in the Netherlands. That's an average house, 300,000 euros. And they're now starting to build new houses way cheaper for 80K, 90K, right? So they can sell those to the immigrants, right? But you understand that when the new houses being built are so much cheaper than the ones who were built in the past, something is going to happen. Namely, the mortgages will go down. The value of housing eventually must go down in the Netherlands. Because if new houses are built for less money than the old houses are worth, the whole market collapses in that sense. We are witnessing in the Netherlands, therefore, and in many other Northwest European countries, the beginning of the end, the beginning of the whole financial foundation that modernity was built on, namely that you can own a house and watch it rise in value. When this is gone, what will there be left for people to hold on to have a sense of having a stake in the world, that they matter? Nothing. They will have to return to religion. They will have to return to religion. There's no other way. Instead of believing that your house is going to appreciate in value and make you rich in the end, you're going to have to erect a little shrine in your house and start fucking praying to your God again, because that's the only thing left. And I think maybe there is a connection here, right? If people start worshiping the financial value of their houses, perhaps the spiritual value of their life diminishes or is considered less important, right? And now it reverses. When the houses stop being so valuable, perhaps people will be forced to look within again to find there that the spiritual value of their lives was always the greater value. I don't know if I've ever met any Croatians in Holland. Can't remember. All I know about Croatia is they almost won the World Cup once. everybody was cheering for them because they had like a white soccer team and everybody else had these mixed race multicultural teams. That was funny, man. I'm religious in the sense that I was born and raised Roman Catholic, didn't really do much with it. In my 20s, I would have told everybody I was atheist because I wasn't interested in it. But then in my 30s, I sometimes start going to church. Because we have these beautiful cathedrals in Europe, it pays to visit them sometimes, right? Especially if you want to have some time alone and you want to feel like some spiritual connection to something. But maybe I'll describe it this way. 8 years or so ago, I went hiking in northern Sweden, and I came down the Chakcha Pass on the Kungsleden Trail. And I sat down to dry my socks because there was snow up top. It was cold, but the sun was out. It was a clear blue sky. And I felt for the first time in my life that I wasn't alone. This was such a great feeling. I began to see things differently from then on. I became more religious. Yeah, definitely became more religious in this sense. But religious in the sense of spiritual feeling and not so much in the sense of organized rituals. I still don't care about the organized rituals of the Catholic Church, but I do care about like the sense of spirituality that you can derive from a religion. That is definitely something I care about. Someone writes, society is so morally bankrupt, I fear the religions and practices they will turn to. Yeah. Oh, you mean that they're going to do it wrong? Yeah. Okay, let me get this off screen and remove that for a bit. All right. You're a very good speaker. Thank you very much. I've been practicing speaking for the past 4 years as a Dutch person in English. Right, so it was quite hard at the start. I tried to explain this already earlier. The hardest thing with speaking is formulating your thoughts and then putting that into language. So you have to have something to say, you have to figure out how to say it, and then say it. With the right intonation, the right energy, the right emotion even, can you convince people that way? But I also learned that you can practice this and you will actually get better at it. So let me describe to you briefly my process of the past 4 years or so in speaking. First, I really had trouble figuring out what to talk about, right? Even though I have a lot of thoughts, they were like fragmented. I had to first clean my brain up, so to speak, so I could figure out, okay, I need to make sense about something. So I started writing articles, and I've been writing articles for a long time. And then I turned those articles in more polished versions for speaking. Because the way you write a book is not the same way you speak. That's very different. So you got to write for speaking, right? Speech writing. And then you clear up the sentences. You make them a bit shorter, more understandable. You remove big words. You replace them with words everybody knows, right? And then you pay attention to things like rhythm and cadence and so on. And then you just start practicing those speeches. I started practicing them like 4 years ago, 2019. I was recording videos, 20-minute videos for YouTube with some screenshots and imagery. I was doing basically voiceovers. And I got good at this at some point, and I could hear the improvements in my ear. When I played back what I was doing 3 months earlier, I could hear, hey, wow, when I started, I was really stumbling. I couldn't really do it. All of a sudden, my voice starts sounding better. And then I went from speech writing. I figured, well, wait a minute. I can't just do speeches. I should also be able to simply turn those speeches into a couple of notes and then do the speech that I prepared, right? Off of the top of my head. So that was the next phase in my speaking experience. I still wrote out the speeches, but then I simplified them in just like a couple of bullet points, and then just tried to do the speech from the mind, right? From the heart. But still going down my bullet points. And then I went a step further and said, well, wait a minute. I don't always want to have the bullet points. I also want to be able to really just sit down and have a story to tell like that, right? Without having prepared something. So I start practicing speaking about any topic without preparing my words, without preparing speeches. And then finally TikTok comes along and I start doing short bits. So I practice short bits, practice polishing the way you say things and so on, and get better at it. And now the final phase is I'm doing live shows, which I would honestly not have been able to do a year ago. Just 1 year ago, I would not have been able to sit here and fill an hour talking. I would not have had the skill to do it. That just shows you how fast you can grow in a certain skill if you really put your time and effort into it. And don't be afraid of people putting you down. Those people don't matter. I get so many insults on the app. I get way more insults than normal human beings, but I also learned to deal with that. I met this guy who was like a professor at some institute, and he was absolutely terrified of people putting him down. And I said, dude, I get put down 100 times a day on my TikTok account alone. Like really harsh, cruel insults. I just deal with that. I no longer allow it to touch me personally, or it would have made me very depressed. I grew a thick skin, basically. And I think the way to do it is that every time people write nasty, mean things to me, I assume that it's projection. They are just projecting onto me. They see me, they don't like me, and they give me something they don't like about themselves. That's projection, right? I love Norway. The difference between Norway and Sweden is that Norway is really mountainous, the whole thing. And Sweden, at least in the south, has some flatlands. Sweden has more water probably because all the water that melts in Norway eventually flows down to Sweden, or out to sea, of course. If I could ever afford it, I would like to live in southern Norway. I found some places like Geilo and some other place there nearby. Those are small towns with like 30, 40, 50,000 people or so. But they're so nice, so beautiful. Like Voss. Voss is also a town in Norway, VOSS. Definitely visit that. Small towns, but so right in the middle of nature. You can go skiing there. They have these are towns with their own ski slopes, right? You can go mountain biking in the summer, of course. It's not warm there. It's obviously very cold. Also in the summer, it won't really get that hot. But it's so, and the roads are nasty. It's hard for two cars to cross on these roads by the fjords. So anyway, if you're into that kind of life, and it's very, very expensive, a regular burger meal would be like $30, $40 or so, really expensive. And it's expensive for them as well there, so. Yeah, Jared Taylor, yeah, I've heard of him, but I never really dove into this guy. Keep up the good work, Johannes. Thank you very much. Yeah. I would love to retire in a log cabin somewhere up in the mountains of Norway. Be like this old sage preaching of the revival of the West. Norwegian tax, I don't know about it. So Norway is not part of the European Union, but as an EU citizen, you can move to Norway on the condition that you get a job there. You have to prove that you have a job there. Otherwise, you can't come. Which is kind of unfair because other migrants, say from the Sahara Desert, they can just come to Norway, apply for asylum, and they don't have to have a job to stay there. That's really unfair, isn't it? Yeah, if you have any questions, go ahead. You can follow me on my newsletter, www.jmk.info. I also have a Twitter at JohannesMKX. I have my Telegram at t.me/JohannesMK. I have my TikTok, of course, here at The Great Johannes. My YouTube is also at The Great Johannes. I have different usernames on these platforms. It's because certain names were already taken, right? So I couldn't really do much about that, Yeah, somebody has a migrant who went to Norway, really? Oh, I mean you're from Norway and you have one of those immigrants in your class now, okay? Congratulations. Yeah. Yeah, it started in the 1980s in the Netherlands when I was in school, in primary school, and then they had we had our first Muslim pupils coming in. Yeah, they wore the headscarf. They had strange names, Zainab. Yeah. Anyway, when it's just one or two, no one cares, right? But when they become a majority and you are the minority, all of a sudden you know you're losing your country and there's not going to be housing for you anymore, right? Someone asks now, what do I think about the Vatican and its current rule? Well, Pope Francis is a Jew, so what do you want to expect? Pope Francis met the former president of France, François Hollande, and said to him, when Hollande visited the Vatican, said to him, Europe is in need of rejuvenation, by which he meant African mass migration into Europe, rejuvenating the European demographic. This is what the Pope is doing. This is what the Vatican Church is doing right. They are literally facilitating mass migration into Europe. And they don't care necessarily that these migrants are Christian. They don't care because what is the real bigger plan now? To fuse Christianity with Islam and create a bigger religion out of it. A Chrislam or a Islamdom. You know, Islamianity. It's horrible. They're literally doing this. These globalist fucks think they can just impose these really big changes on us, and they know if we educate children from the earliest ages, the old parents will die out eventually. Their beliefs will die out, and then the children will simply believe in a completely rewritten version of their reality. And this is why I think, you know, it's necessary that more of us start speaking out, because the young kids, they are on TikTok, right? They are on the social media. At least they get some access to alternative opinions. So they realize that it's not all what the government says or what the Vatican wants to do. Where do I get all this info about everything? I just read a lot. A lot of books. The best thing to do, I presume, would be to look for the really interesting books to read on any topic. You learn more. I've learned more from books than from watching TV or the news, obviously. Yeah, books are a good starting point. Especially books written around the 19th century, early 20th century, because they still tell the truth. Books written after 1960 are all propaganda, all ideologized, it's all fake. Do you feel the United States is living in a Weimar condition? If so, will they turn right? No, I think it's totally different. I've heard about the phrase Weimerica, yeah. Weimar America. So the Weimar Republic, the way I understand it, I'm not a historian, obviously, but the Weimar Republic was this interbellum period in Germany between the First and the Second World War, where you have this intermezzo, and they simply their morality declined, and you get like in this sense it is similar that the United States, the OnlyFans community, so many girls selling feet pictures for $1, but also the losers buying that. Who pays $1 for a girl's feet pictures? You have to be nuts. Don't do that, man. Keep that dollar to yourself. Invest it in something useful, like a house or something. You know. The United States today, like the Weimar Republic, really hypersexualizes women. They say that the Nazis used women as breeding machines, but then they, the so-called progressives, use women as whores. So which is better, a whore or a wife? Yeah, American girls just want you to throw money at them. There's these clips on TikTok where you have this woman scantily clad, wearing almost nothing. They sell coffee. It's called, I don't know what's it called. some kind of coffee enterprise. They have these coffee trucks. They drive them out. They take half their clothes off. They're in a bikini, something, right? And then they sell coffee to passersby, like overpriced coffee, obviously. And they just lure you in with their bodies to sell coffee, you know. That is such a whoredom. And now that brings me to a poem I want to read from the Edda. Because there's this incredibly well poetic Edda describes the situation. So I think I should look it up for a moment. If I can find it online. Voluspa. Here we go. Just a minute, I'm going to look up some translation over here. Well, I'm just looking up some really awesome poetry here. Voluspa, or them. Ah, here it is. Okay, you want to hear this? This is a really great poem describing Weimar and Weimerica, but only it's already written in the Old Norse Edda, the poetic Edda, in the poem called Voluspa, or the Seeress's poem. It's the first one in the book of the poetic Edda. The 45th stanza goes like this. Brothers shall fight and fell each other, and sisters' sons shall kinships... Sorry, I have to do it again. That's the problem when you're not a native English speaker. Brothers shall fight and fell each other, and sisters' sons shall kinship stain. Hard it is on earth with mighty whoredom. Axe time, sword time, shields are sundered. Wind time, wolf time, ere the world falls. Never shall men each other spare. Yeah, that describes our situation, right? We're going to hell. The women are whores. They sell their feet pictures on TikTok. You know, when you say in English language, right? If you say women are whores, that's not the same thing as saying the women are whores, and that's not the same as saying all the women are whores. There's a big difference. See, I had to study English to really grasp the language, right? When you say women are whores, that means some women are whores, most are not. When you say the women are whores, that's definite. Then you're saying here's a group of women, and these women, the women, are whores. You're referring to a group. Only when you say specifically all the women are whores do you say that all the women are whores. You have to say all the. Alright, have I been to Ålesund? No, I haven't been there. So I take it I have a bleak vision for the future of America. Your problem is, how do you motivate the remaining white middle class to do anything at all if all they really care about is their house and their coffee, you know? In order to really motivate such a large group of people, you need to have a new vision for the future. And although it might be possible to come up with some vision, you have to then convince these people to get along with you. And this requires just a totally different type of leadership that I think will have to exist outside of your political system. What I mean to say is you can't win this with elections anymore. You got to get out in the streets, envision what you really want. At this point, what is left of the United States? What can you still do? You could either fall apart into three separate nations, right? You will have a Hispanic southwest of the USA, or you will have a southeast area that will be African and African USA, and then in the north you will have a white people's USA. It may split up like that. Or do you really think that these multicultural, diverse cities will continue to exist forever? I doubt it. How are you going to go on with it from here? You know, when in the southern states of the USA, the white births have dropped to 40%. 60% are born from non-white parents. What are you going to do now, you know? What is even the purpose of that? Either you will simply really lose out, whites become a minority, and that means you will be losing power, just like in South Africa. You won't have power to do anything. You'll be condemned to the countryside and to the suburbs, perhaps, right? They're not going to treat you well. You need to understand that and already now begin to organize, because you know it's the Turner Diaries. You're going to go do that, do the Turner Diaries, fight back, or what else? You're just going to give up? You're just going to think to yourself, well, if we're nice to our new rulers, maybe they will let us live. No, they will kill you first because you're white. I read the comments, right? Underneath my videos, I read the comment sections. And you should know what Africans say about us. It's a barrage of hate. They are absolutely out for blood. You know, you think you can be, in the long term, survive as a white minority among black people. No, they will kill you. It's just naive to think that you can have some white women suck some black dicks and they'll let us live. No, they're going to kill all of you. And the women too. Right. If you don't have a lot of siblings anymore, how are you supposed to make a stand for your family? Imagine it this way: if the United States today would fall into a race war, what's that really going to look like? What's it going to look like? It's you and your sister against a clan of 40 cousins and nieces all working together to kill you. Because they've got 40 cousins. How many do you have? You've got 3 cousins and 1 sister. They got 40 cousins and 5 sisters, or 5 brothers, right? They win. You have to be prepared for this, and that's why I predict that, I've said this many times before, 80% of white people are not going to survive this century. We're going to see a massive decline in our numbers. We're going to have to leave certain territories behind because we can't defend them anymore. People won't respect us there. But that doesn't mean I see the future as bleak. I see that we can, in Europe, for example, at least, definitely make a last stand and begin fighting back successfully. Yeah, just wood, yeah. My vision for a strong Europe is that we rebuild something like the Holy Roman Empire, and we basically make sure that we take the central column of Europe, Central Europe, take Central Europe from southern Scandinavia to northern Italy, take the connections to the sea, defend this to the last mound, keep it, maintain it, and build that out into an empire of our own. I foresee that Europe will become very powerful again. Europe will become a place that makes the decisions in the world. What do I think of Motstandsbevægelsen, the resistance movement in Scandinavia? Yeah, very good. Someone wants to know the name of this song. This is Hotel Pool's Snowfall. You know, this idea that you have to take DNA tests to be allowed to live in my white empire, you have a last name, you have a face, that should be enough. We're not going to do a fucking blood test, man. This isn't about purity. It's not a purity contest. It's about having people who are willing and motivated to contribute to a society that comes from within ourselves, from our hearts and souls, right? That we pour out into reality, right? And we come up with, it doesn't have to be the architecture of the 19th century. We don't have to go back and do the same thing. The whole point of tradition is also renewal. Traditionalism changes, right? It means we envision a future that we want to have, something we are willing to fight for, right? But keep in mind, many people aren't that competent. They won't be able, like they tried to send the Ukrainian men to war against Russia and they lost largely because the Ukrainian men didn't know how to properly operate the American equipment. So you have a problem with competency. Keep that in mind. What are your people really capable of, you know? You know, in the United States, in certain areas, they had to remove the self-checkouts, right? At a supermarket, you can do a self-checkout, right? But you need to have an IQ over 75 or 80 or so to be able to use these things, right? So there are certain places in the USA where they had to remove them and bring back human cashiers to help people check out their food. Because if you live in a place where a certain demographic has an average IQ of 75, they can't use self-checkout machines. And here you see the limitations of diversity. You can bring all these people over, right? But if you have literally a large, you can even claim that IQ is a colonial racist invention of white people. But if your IQ is actually so low that you don't know how to use a microwave, you don't know how to use the self-checkout machines, you cannot advance with those people. You are limited to the abilities of your people. This is why white people are such a great people. We're not the smartest like the Asians, but we're certainly not the dumbest. And the thing is, we are just smart enough to work with modernity, right? And still a bit dumb enough, you know, to get organized well. The Russians are comfortable with casualty producing strategies. Yeah, they still have to watch out though. I think white Americans are, as I said, everybody from the colonies, I call it the colonies, everybody's welcome back to Europe. Because I think we are going to have to make a stand right here in the center in the heart of Europe. We will have to command this territory. And then link up with resources from Russia. We will have to have trade alliances with Russia. I used to eat a lot of kebab, but I don't eat kebab anymore now. I also don't go to McDonald's anymore. Yeah, kebab meat was actually invented in Berlin by Turkish immigrants. But then it spread to Europe and everybody loves to eat it now. Because it's just meat. It's spicy meat, but it's poor quality meat. It's a poor man's dinner, right? Nowadays, I just eat a lot of chicken and minced meat, ground beef. Europe should not be a theocratic state, but I do believe that the sort of people who should eventually rule a state, they will be the priests who appoint the kings. You know, the people bow to the king, and the king bows to the priest who got him elected or got him in power. I'm technically not a National Socialist, I'm more like a reactionary. I quit eating kebab because I didn't want to fund Islam, that's why. But of course sometimes I have this meat, you can buy it anywhere, you have it in the supermarket or whatever. In the Netherlands now we have these entire sections in the supermarket with halal meat. This is really weird because they will sell you halal meat and then next to that you have the vegan meat section, right? So they don't want non-Muslims to eat meat anymore, but Muslims can still have halal meat. Strange, huh? My favorite political figure is Otto von Bismarck, the German unifier. He waged war on France. He did make some mistakes. He should have burned Paris to the ground, but he accepted the peace treaty. And that's why now we have atheism in Europe, because the French socialists, they pushed for the atheism. Yeah, look, this isn't a food purity thing, man. You can still be right-wing and eat a kebab once in a while. It's like I eat spaghetti. Spaghetti was not invented by the Germanic Aryans, you know, so... What do I think of modern Europeans practicing paganism? If it is meant for a sort of spiritual revival, then it is laudable. I mean, these people going for paganism, they obviously aren't interested in Christianity, but it's still better than the materialist atheism that they give us all the time, right? How's it, Johannes? How's it, Roy Gevaar? Oh, here we go. I remember you from the communist from South Africa. I don't mean that as an insult. I am able to listen to people who disagree with me as long as they don't just personally insult me and call me nuts all the time. Battle of idea between workers, perhaps. The year 1848 really marks a massive transformation in Europe and in the history of the West. That's when they came up with veganism, vegetarianism, with the idea of moral relativity, with the idea of cultural relativity, and also scientific relativity, namely the idea that time is relative. They came up with the socialism and communism and so on, and in response also nationalism developed. Both nationalism and communism are quite recent inventions, historically speaking. They came along around 1850 and became popular around the 1900s. What's my opinion of the Dutch East India Company? That's an amazing feat. They were more powerful than nations. They minted their own coins. They had their own executions. They could convict people to death. All right. And they could found new nations. Really, they were very powerful. Yeah. that would have been a very awesome thing to be a part of, right? Imagine you were a captain for the East India Company, and you were like one of the first Europeans to travel the world. That would have been a really great time, right? You know what the great difference is between China and Europe? China was historically always able to force millions of men into military service, simply by commanding it. Whereas Europe was not able to do so. Europe had standing armies in feudal times. Say a feudal king had like 8,000 permanent soldiers, like a professional army. But the feudal armies were very well trained. They were true professionals who dedicated their lives to combat, whereas the Chinese peasants had never used a weapon ever. They were peasants, literally. And so you see the difference here between having a large army of untrained warriors who've never seen battle, or a small army of absolutely well-trained, dedicated professionals. Who would win? Well, for a long time, the Western armies won because they were simply better at fighting. Are pigs a modern invention? Oh, cops. Yeah. That's right. Cops are really necessary to police the cities, right? The word politics means something like the management of cities. And politics come from polis, right? It means city. Of course, you didn't need police officers in a time where most people were living in the countryside. You had familiar faces, right? People knew each other well. You didn't have this problem. Right? No, police is like, what's the police? What would you compare police to? You would compare it to, a shepherd who catches a pig that escapes his barn. That's what a police officer is nowadays. Yeah, I don't really believe that. Someone says that cops came about to protect the interest of the capitalist elite, but I think it's rather to police the behavior of people in the streets. They didn't want people to, cause trouble. The lower classes weren't very refined, so you get a lot of crime and stabbing and so on, so they need to clear that out. Also, probably to keep the poor people away from the rich. That I do believe. I do believe police was invented to keep poor people away from rich people, so that rich people could have their bourgeois restaurants and be left alone by the lower classes, so to speak. I think that is what it's about. Did you know that? Can you guess what is the safest country for a single solo traveling woman to visit? Can you guess? In Europe. What's the safest country in Europe for a single solo traveling woman? It's Hungary. Hungary has the lowest rape rate and murder rate of women in the world. In Europe. That's actually Hungary. And Sweden is the most dangerous for a single woman to visit. Because of the rape. Policing was to protect mines and goods from the poor. Yeah, I believe that. I believe it was to stop people from taking the wealth away from the bourgeoisie. Yeah, that's definitely true. Alright, I'm slowly running out of things to talk about after 1.5 hours almost of streaming. I'd like to go on, but usually I need to reboot my thoughts so I have more to say next session, right? I'm wearing my coat because I don't want to pay for heating, so I put it on 15 degrees Celsius. Saves me. And it also, actually I'm trying to get healthier. By keeping it a bit colder, it forces your body to burn more fat. So I literally lost a ton of belly fat just by turning down my heating in my house. So I don't have to go running outside all the time, you know? Someone writes, I'm Swedish and Irish by blood. In a Euro colony, it pains me that my ancestral countries are hurting. Yeah. So I suppose you're from the USA or somewhere, or Canada, whatever. But yeah, you're welcome to come back, because we import so many immigrants to Europe nowadays, but they're all people from India, North Africa, and Central Africa. Like, what is going on here, man? This is such a messed up situation. People should have the right to something they can call home, something that looks like home. I saw a video today of a place with full of black people, and it looked like you're in Congo on the market. But it was in Paris, France. Why is Switzerland not influenced by the situation? Switzerland does have a lot of migrants in their factories and so on. But Switzerland is still very expensive to live there. If you don't have a job, you simply won't be able to live there. It's a small country, really. It's a mountainous country, so you live up in the mountains. In the Alps, right? This always keeps people away because the cost of travel is very high and so on. You can't really do anything. Right? Oh, that's interesting. As a Moroccan Christian, you're leaving Europe and moving to the United Arab Emirates. Okay. I've been to places in Europe where I was the minority white person, like places in Malmo, and then places in north of Amsterdam. I went to a market in West Amsterdam as well, East Amsterdam. Yeah, there's tons of... Amsterdam is racially segregated, just like Johannesburg. You know, you have the white sections and the Turkish sections and the Indian sections and the black people sections. There's a whole part of the south, in the south of Amsterdam, called the Bijlmer, and there you have all the Africans. It's really strange. People don't mix naturally. People really want to live among their own kind, really. That's really odd. Have I ever been to Eastern Europe? Yeah, of course. What are my thoughts about it? Yeah, I've been to many Eastern European countries like Hungary, Bulgaria, Romania, also the northern one like Latvia, Lithuania, Estonia, Albania even. I spent one day in Serbia, and I've seen Greece. Greece is Eastern Europe? No, I guess so. My general impression was, especially Romania. I think I remember Romania well. They have like a lot of nature there still. Although the big cities are like normal, you know. It's not like Romania looks poor or something. No, the Romanian cities like Iași or Cluj-Napoca, they look very normal. I'm not into luxury watches. I have only one watch that I wear every day. I bought it because it tells me the time. Well, I used to travel a lot. Most of it on a shoestring budget, by the way. I would spend time in hostels where you can sleep for $10. And especially in Eastern Europe at the time, you could sleep for $6 a night. You know, and then you spend the rest on buses and so on. So it doesn't have to be expensive. You can be very creative and get very far. At one point, I did a long trip through Eastern Europe, and I just stayed in one place for 3 or 4 days. And then I moved to another city, took the bus, like a Flixbus for six euros, and then I spent the nights for €6. Yeah, you can do it very cheaply, but yeah, if you bring a couple of €1,000 in savings, you can still get far in Eastern Europe on a low budget. You get your food from the supermarket and so on, right? Don't go to McDonald's. It's just too expensive. I'm not a Calvinist. I'm from the south of the Netherlands, which is Roman Catholic. Where I live, you know, where I grew up, I mean, in North Brabant, which is in the south of the Netherlands. We were the Catholic people. We were always looked down upon in the past. Before the immigrants came, we were basically the lower working class for the rest of the country, the Protestant north. It's less populated. The Catholics in the Netherlands have been used as cattle, really. And then the migrants came and they simply replaced us with Muslims. Oh, somebody is also a Catholic. Yeah, maybe that's why. Maybe that's why we share this mentality. You know, I have to tell you the truth. If I look at all the people that I've met in my life, with whom do I have the strongest connection psychologically speaking? Strangely, it's Irish people. I really like those Irish people who would go to war for the IRA, for example. That's me. You know, I'm like a separatist. I have that separatist mentality as well. You know, and Norwegians also, I think. The sort of Norwegians who like to go hiking in the mountains. I feel a connection with them too. Irish people are good singers, I think. They make such beautiful music. You know, in Ireland, they have dedicated parking spots for priests. That is a win. Do you think the Netherlands will thrive when Wilders is in power? No, his power will be limited because you have to make alliances with other parties, and they are going to continue the whole mass immigration program. Nothing will change. I think Maastricht in the Netherlands is also Catholic. Yes, it's in the south. Flanders in the Netherlands are Catholic, and the north of the Netherlands is a Protestant. If people are joining this, I was just doing a sort of live stream chats for the past 1.5 hours, just casually, really. I just want to improve my speaking a little bit, so I practice speaking more and more and more. The more speaking practice you get, of course, the better you get at it over time. I noticed that it works. Over the past 4 years, I clearly can tell that I've become a better speaker. I'm not atheist, although in my 20s I would have told people I was atheist. I was baptized Roman Catholic, and nowadays I perceive there to be something more than just material in origin. The world is more than just matter in motion. The world does have a free will. There is a soul. There is all this other non-material dimension out there. And from there you can derive religion and spirituality. Yeah, sure. To the matter of free will, I always said to myself, you know, scientists, they dig a hole in your brain and they can't find the free will center. Okay, where is free will then? And I made a comparison between a downhill skier with a downhill skier doesn't possess gravity, right? But a downhill skier can use gravity because gravity possesses the skier, and the same way I believe it's the same way for free will. I may not possess free will, but free will possesses me, and I can use that to make decisions. I think somewhere around the 15th, 16th century, a book became very popular in Europe called the Corpus Hermeticum, written by Hermes Trismegistus. I've spoken about this before, but I wanted to mention what is really in it. In this book, we have this notion of a universe that is limited with an edge, that there is an edge of the universe, basically, that contains everything within it, a universe rather than something else, right? And this brings you to the other notion of, well, within the universe, that's where we have the something, and the nothing exists outside of the universe. This may be a bit vague and abstract, but I don't believe this is so. There is no edge of the universe. Rather, the so-called nothingness and the so-called somethingness, they kind of fuse together. And it is this dark force of the nothingness where we derive free will, right? God, and so on. Free will, God, spirituality, and so on, and all these other things, yeah. You have a great knack for speaking, for sure, yeah. But I feel I can grow so much further, so that's why I need to practice every day, speak on TikTok, do my live shows, right? I feel still this intense drive in me to be very, very influential with my speaking. But I need to figure out how to navigate the world. And TikTok is very difficult to navigate in terms of speech and phrases. Basically, any video I make can be reported and shut down. If enough people report it, the video goes down. So. What's your opinion on the pagan satanic subculture that has infected nationalism and us? I don't think it was satanic though. It was definitely occult. Let's call it occult. So the occult movement deeply influenced the Third Reich behind the scenes in the form of Himmler, for example. But what I know about it is they had a certain worldview, which they called Wodanism or Odinism, where they believed that you can tap into the energies of the cosmos to create new reality, so to speak. They believed they could use this force to create. So it wasn't necessarily evil. It's certainly not satanic in the sense that they were butchering children. They weren't doing that. Why are Catholics so hated in Holland? Well, we used to be their workforce. The Catholics used to provide the children for the factories, basically. They see us as second-rate citizens. So this is funny, right? Even before migrants, Catholics in the Netherlands were the second rates. We were the second rates, and then they replaced us with Muslims, and they gave the benefits they promised to us, to the Catholics, they gave it to the newcomers, to the immigrants. It's just totally unfair. We deserve... Catholics in the Netherlands, they are the first group to deserve, how do you call it? Slave repairments? Repairments or repayments. Reparations, sorry. I mean, we deserve reparations for being exploited by the Protestants. Reparations, yeah. I think nowadays most Dutch people are not religious, by the way. They are worshipping the god Mammon, really. It's all about money and attention, just like in the USA today. Right? All right, that's it for tonight. I'm gonna post this video to my YouTube channel at The Great Johannes, and I'll see you next time when I have more to say again, because I'm running out of ideas now. Have fun. See you later.